from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, everyone, welcome to another great episode of the Practitioner Brief. Joining me today is one of my favorite people in our entire industry, Mr. Rogers. Roger, how's it going, buddy?
Man, I'm doing great as always.
You know, it's great to finally have you back on the show. And
I'm always glad to be here with you.
I'm so happy you're here. Howdy to Mr. Fallon. Hi to Brent. Good morning. Finally making it live this week. To wish you congratulations. Thank you so much. Today is a big day for my son. He does his covenant with God today. It's his bris, Larry. So thank you so much, buddy. I really do appreciate it. In a few short hours, my son will have made his covenant through the ceremony of circumcision with the Creator. So, stressful day. I look at him sleeping, and I'm like, you just enjoy it, precious. You won't remember it, but I will. But thank you, everyone, for tuning into the show today. We're live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and our CyberHub podcast LinkedIn page. So thank you for everyone who's tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe to the show. A lot of great stuff coming your way. Like I said, Roger's with me today, and a big shout out to KnowBe4 for their support of the show. Without their support this month, this show would not be possible. So Roger's joining me today. Roger's got a story we're going to talk about a little bit, including the stuff that we're going to address. But we're going to talk a little bit about MFA today. Just a little bit, tiny bit, just ever so slightly. Roger's going to touch on something that is going to turn your world upside down. So don't go anywhere. Don't think for a second of, all right, I got everything I need. Now they're just going to banter. The banter today is the best part of the show. So we're going to get through the stories real quick, and we're going to go to the banter as quickly as humanly possible. But before we do that, I'm got my traditional double espresso. Roger, you drinking anything special this morning?
Just coffee, half decaf. Turns out I need a little bit less caffeine, or my heart races. I flutter like a teenage boy.
You know, I need as much caffeine as humanly possible at this point. So good morning, David, and good morning to Nick. Thank you for being here, buddy. And coffee cup cheers, folks.
Yeah, actually, I found out I was giving some early morning talks, and I was starting to I always have jitters public speaking all the time, but I literally got lightheaded, and I'm like, am I having a heart attack or panic attack? My wife went, they're all in the morning? I said, yeah. She said, maybe it's coffee. So I did one without coffee, and it didn't happen. Tried it again, didn't happen. Turns out it was coffee, and I was starting to drink more coffee, or it'd be in the mornings where I drank like a huge cup, and so I went half and half, and turns out caffeine's a real drug. Didn't know.
Yeah. You know, some of the most addicting stuff is completely legal and on the shelf of your store, folks. Let's get into some of the stories that are hitting us up today, folks. We'll start off with this one. Google patches 19 vulnerabilities in Chrome 95 browser refresh. A huge refresh for Chrome. Please make sure to get this updated. Several of these vulnerabilities are significant, including the most severe of them, which is CV 2021-379-81, which is a heap buffer overflow in Skia, for which a $20,000 bounty reward was paid. These are all significant if you do use Chrome for whatever reason, if that is your browser of choice or browser of requirement from your organization. Make sure those are updated. We'll stick with Google for our next story and move on to this one, where Google says that YouTube creators have been targeted with password-stealing malware and phishing attacks that are coordinated by financially motivated threat actors. This is according to the Google Threat Analysis Group, who first spotted the campaign in late 2019, found that multiple hack-for-hire actors recruited via job ads on Russian-speaking forums were behind these attacks. The malware itself was observed in attacks including commodity strains like Redline, Viter, Predator the Thief, Nexus Stealer, Azarolt, Raccoon, Grand Stealer, Vicro Stealer, Mossad, and Cantel, as well as open source ones like Adamantium Thief and leak tools like Serrano. They target system. It steals credentials and browser through browser cookies. which allows them to steal the victim's essentially password through that cookie setting, and then they get automatic authentication. Because, Roger, what's safer than a cookie that's tracking you on the web?
Yeah, really. And it's interesting too. And cookie hijacks, right? Been around forever. You could make a cookie. So the possession of the cookie is like possession of a driver's license, right? It says this person has been verified and they are who they say they are. But you could easily design a cookie system that's tied to the device where it was actually issued. So you could actually have some type of, public-private key that only exists on every device, and that cookie would only work with that device, like that public-private key would unlock it type thing. That would make it harder for cookie theft alone. Like in these cases, the attackers are many times on the machine, right? As soon as I execute malware on your system, it's not your system anymore, and I can do a whole lot of things that aren't cookie hijacking. But I am amazed that after 30 years of cookies, that we don't make it a little bit tougher than mere possession of a text file being control of the account. Like there are ways to make it so that the mere theft of the cookie doesn't imply identity. But we don't update the cookie standard, so we have the same problem. One other thing I wanted to pass along about this one is that, and Google really had a great paper on this a day or two ago, is that there are a whole lot of threat actors that are doing this. They come in with fake identities. They establish trust. So they'd come into me and you, like they target computer security researchers, and they're like, hey, how you doing? James, I love your stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then they'll do something like, I want to invite you to a conference. And then you're like, oh, either to attend or to speak at. And then they bring you to this website that is this really fantastic looking conference website. And they ask you how you want to log on in. And they give you what looks like an OAuth identity thing. And you're like, oh, I want to log in with Facebook or Twitter or whatever ID. And when you click on it, what they actually do is actually reset your account and get a PIN, which sends a PIN to your phone or your phone app. And you type in that code thinking it's registration for the conference, but really you've just given that recovery code to the attacker and they steal your account. So Google's report, you should read it. It's pretty amazing. I talk about it a lot. I've written about this a lot, but this idea that they can trick you, you get this code that you think is a registration code, but really it's a reset code to the same thing. And all it does go, oh, you're logging as Google, Google sends you this code. And it's the code you've been told that's going to be sent to you because of the website. But it's not a registration code, it's a reset code. As soon as you give it to the attackers, they automate taking over the account. So that I assume that was part of this as well. But attackers have been doing it at least since 2017 en masse. And keep in mind, they're establishing trust first with this fake persona before they invite you to the conference. So by not asking you to do something right away, you have this implied trust and maybe you like them a little bit more. And I got to say, you read stuff like this, sometimes you're like, man, that is a little bit scary, right? Like it's a slow thing and then they hit you. It's pretty wild.
Indeed. For those listening, I know that we have an image issue with the LinkedIn stream. So if you do want to watch, please go to YouTube CyberHub Podcast. You can catch us live there as well. You can do that on Facebook too at the moment. We're completely dark on LinkedIn at the moment. So we'll keep going. I'll re-air this for everyone on LinkedIn in just about once we're over. I'll just relaunch it, re-record it. I'll launch this recording all over again so people can continue to watch where this is a LinkedIn issue at the moment is what I'm getting. So I do apologize about that. We'll move to our next story, by the way, folks. This is a malicious NPM package that's running Cryptominers on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS devices. Non-discriminatory. These are JavaScript libraries that have been uploaded to the official NPM package repository. They've been unmasked as crypto mining malware. Once again, showing why open source just needs to have better controls around. What are your thoughts on all these open source packages having all these different backdoors and crypto mining software?
Yeah, I just kind of laughed at the whole. I think it continues to blow away the myth of the many eyes. The many eyes that because it's open source, and I love open source. I'm a big open source believer. I love OpenBSD and CubesOS and things like that. But the whole myth of many eyes, that because anybody can look at the code and tell there's been, let me say, we're unique in that these were only shortly lived and they weren't downloaded that much. There have been things that have been downloaded for decades that had huge bugs in them that were not discovered by anybody that looked in them. And there have certainly been other things that lived longer for months before, malicious injections that lived for months before people detected it. I love open source. Open source is good, but there is no special protection given to open source by the many eyes theory of, hey, anybody can look at it and notice these things. I love it. I didn't make this up, but somebody did, saying the many eyes theory is like you're a passenger on an airplane and they're telling all the passengers get off and look around underneath the airplane. Well, typically a pilot would do that, but they're like, as a passenger in the airplane, you should get around and look at this airplane, make sure everything's okay. You're not trained in how to spot aviation airline defects. And the vast majority of people downloading the code don't have the expertise to notice something malicious, much less the time or the inclination to do it. And that's the problem. But I'm going to go on and say this, that I don't think it's any worse than commercial software. It's just, there's no special protection just because you're open source.
No, there isn't. And by the way, we'll take this for what it really is. Open source, the idea of so many people being there that nothing bad can happen. Well, you've got to ensure that all the people have the same amount of knowledge and expertise to cheat it, which is not the case in open source. Most of the time, it's juniors that don't even know how to tell the difference between, what's properly written and what needs to be modified, and end up going to watch YouTube videos to get it done right. So keep that in mind as well. And finally, the U.S. government has woken up to the fact that we should probably ban the export of hacking tools to regimes that are malicious in nature. So congratulations to the U.S. Department of Commerce for waking up to the reality that we should probably look at cyber tools for what they really are, which is weapons. And we should probably start looking at who we're selling these technologies and weapons to. All right, folks. We just have one challenge here today with the stream. I do apologize about that. But this is the United States government that is opposes the misuse of technology to abuse human rights or conduct other malicious cyber activities. While we wait for Roger to be able to join us back on the stream, folks, I will say this.
I'm here.
Okay, great, wonderful. What are your thoughts on this specific story, Roger?
So, first of all, yeah, I think it's good that they wake up, that there should be a control. Although I don't know what level these sort of things work, right? It's stopping people from getting bad tools. But really, there's actually, I think, very much a behind-the-scenes story related to this, is that 2 American contractors that used to work for the American intelligence agencies were recently convicted and charged with hacking, using hacking-type tools to, turns out, hack American targets. Like one of them was in a recent best-selling book where the guy said, I was hacking Michelle Obama's travel schedule. So he was working somewhere in the UAE or Dubai or something like that. So he's working for this Dubai, I think it was Dubai-based company that had a bunch of American ex-intelligence agency hackers with a whole lot of capabilities. And they were then hacking American assets, including the First Lady's travel schedule. Well, those guys got arrested because it's against the law to do what they were doing. And I think this right here is kind of trying to close that hole, because those American contractors were using American-based tools to do their hacking. So I think this particular article doesn't mention it, but I think that is kind of the background. They realized they had this hole that allowed American contractors to use the very best capable hacking software. And when you're in another country, it can be used against America. So I think that's what, they're trying to prevent it from being, to target U.S. entities. They're trying to prevent that from happening. So I think that's really what's behind this. And how good or bad, when someone's willing to pay, $1 million or $2 million for a single 0 day, how hard is it going to be for them to have somebody just be a cover company, buy that tool and get it to you, right? But at least they have, with this type of thing, they at least have the legal backing. So if they find it, they can, prosecute, charge, block, sanction somebody. Without this type of law, you can't even begin to stop that type of activity, or it's harder to do.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Roger, I want you to share with our listeners and audience a little bit about your MFA story, because I think it's really critical for people to hear this today. Once you let us give us a little insight into that.
Yeah. So, for years I'm the hacking MFA guy, right? I wrote the book on it. I teach classes on how to hack MFA. I can hack in any MFA solution, 5 to 10 ways, something like that. But what's interesting is that we do need to go to multi-factor authentication. Everybody needs to get there. Because it significantly reduces some types of attacks. Some, like the ones where they might steal your password or something like that. And I don't know what the percentage is that it blocks of total attacks. Like if you go, okay, if I switch from passwords to MFA for everything, what percentage of attacks am I blocking? No one has that answer, but I would guess between 20 and 35%. It's a pretty big portion. But the epiphany I had this week is that and I've known this for a while, but the vast majority of multi-factor authentication is easily phishable. So I can send people an email that has a malicious link. So just the standard phishing email that if I trick the victim into clicking on, I can get around their MFA solution like it was not there. Trick them into using it against a what's called a man-in-the-middle proxy website, so that everything they type in gets sent to the real website that really the attacker can now do. So with the man-in-the-middle proxy website, the proxy website captures everything sent from the client to the server and server to the client. So when the client is actually told, hey, produce this code, produce this number, type in this thing. So you get a code sent to your phone or your app or push-based authentication, approve this login. That's all being captured, and you think you're interfacing with a real website, but the attacker is really the one interfacing with the website. So they log in as you and take it over. So probably 80 to 90% of multi-factor authentication is easily phishable. And I'm not the only one. The U.S. government is actually so in 2017, they put out the Digital Identity Guidelines, NIST Special Publication 800-63, and they said basically, be careful about using any MFA that is tied to the public switch telephone network. That would be voice-based MFA and SMS-based MFA for the most part. Well, Biden recently released a couple of months ago an executive order that said, among other things, use zero trust and all this other stuff. But there was a clarification memo that came out just a couple of weeks ago, and I read that clarification memo, and it said, do not use easily phishable MFA. This includes voice-based, SMS-based, OTP, one-time password-based, and push-based. So if you look at the types that the U.S. government has declared as easily phishable, it is probably 80 to 90% of the MFA we're all using today. And I was at a conference this week that was dedicated to MFA, discussing MFA, and actually discussing one of the better types of MFA, FIDO, that is not phishable. Not as easily phishable. Everything's phishable, but there's some types certainly more resilient. And there are vendors getting up there going, I had this one major vendor that they either have the most MFA or probably second most popular MFA solution in the world that said, use MFA, get your people to MFA, even if it's weak MFA. Well, this is my epiphany is we're selling people a bad bill of goods. The whole reason we're telling the world to move from passwords to MFA is to stop these phishing attacks, these password phishing attacks. But 80, 90% of the world is being pushed to an option that is easily phishable. So we're literally selling them this story of get to MFA so you can't get phished. And yet 80, 90% of the MFA users can still easily get phished. And the US government has said, don't use it. So we literally have a clarification document that says don't use, it literally says do not, prohibit, do not use easily phishable MFA, yet every single large vendor is still pushing their most popular option that's easily phishable. And there's some like, I used to love push-based authentication. I thought it was great. And then I started hearing stories of how this is incredible to us to understand that a large percentage of push-based, and that's where you get this notice. Are you logging in, yes or no? Do you want to approve the login, yes or no? Right? It turns out a large, consistent percentage of users will approve login prompts even when they're not logging on. They're at home, they're eating dinner, they're watching a TV show, they get a prompt, hey, do you want to log on in? Yes, they do it. There was this, one company that had a ransomware attack, and the CISO approved 50 logins coming from Russia. So it said on their push-based notification, coming from Russia, do you want to approve? Yes. And it's just, and let me say this, what's being pushed by a lot of vendors is single factor push-based. They call it push-based MFA or push-based authentication or passwordless. Let's get to password. It's single factor push. And so all any attacker has to do is get the list of login names, which are just your email addresses, walk up to that, start up Gmail or Office 365, just go to the portal, log in with that person's email address, and that person's going to get a push-based notification, and a significant, consistent percentage of those people will approve it. I think it's easier to hack than passwords. If I can just log in as you and have some certain percentage approve it, I think we've actually made something easier to hack. And I talked to pen testing teams. They're like, yes, Roger, Roger, you get it. This is so easy. I talked to 3 red teams and asked them that had broken into push-based authentication clients. I'm like, would you recommend push-based authentication to your clients? All 3 immediately said no, without reservation. The U.S. government has said, don't use it.
If there is one time you want to listen to the government, listen right here. There's a lot of things we can debate about listening to the government on, but this one, it's like when you're talking about the CISO approving 50 of them coming from Russia, it's like shark-infested waters. Well, yes, I'll take that. Jump in? Sure, why not? Am I being alive? Yeah, but I get to swim with sharks.
And they asked them, why did you do it? Why did you approve those 50 prompts? And he said in frustration, y'all told me when I got this prompt to hit approve. So and what I can imagine, I'm sure you can imagine this. You're an IT guy, and you're just trying to get this new passwordless MFA out, and everybody's bitching and mad and everything. And you're just you're like, listen, when you get in there, you log on in and you hit the approve prompt. See how easy it is? And they didn't communicate that, hey, when it's not you logging in, hit deny and then call IT because someone's trying to break in. Right? They either didn't communicate that because they thought naturally everybody would understand that, or they communicated it and the victim didn't hear it. Right? Indeed. And that's our problem, is that you've got to consider the human factor. And so what I want to push, this is what I want to communicate to every listener right now. If you're using an MFA solution that is easily phishable, and let me say, I wrote an article on LinkedIn. You can go to LinkedIn. I list a bunch of different types, and it's SMS-based, voice-based, OTP, push-based. 80-90% of MFA out there. If you're using, ask yourself, can my user be sent a phishing link, be sent to a fake website that then captures what they're told to type in? And would that work? Is my solution easily phishable? And if it is, think about moving to a solution that is not easily phishable. Because when the U.S. government is telling you this, they're late. They're Johnny come lately on cybersecurity defense. So the U.S. government is telling you, don't use this stuff. The entire world's using 80-90% of the world is using this stuff. The Google just announced all these ways that people got hacked. And a lot of them had MFA because they got taken to this fake registration website. Oh, I'm registering for a conference. And then you get the code or the approval. You say yes, boom. And there are solutions like FIDO that are not easily phishable. There are good solutions out there. I would just encourage every single person that's using MFA, figure out if it's easily phishable. And if it is, go to something else. And I want to implore the vendors that are making easily phishable solutions to implement mitigations to make it not easily phishable. We are getting ready to have this massive migration to MFA. This year is the year of MFA migrations, and we're selling people a false bill of goods in a lot of instances. And it's just going to end up having a lot of people pissed off because they did this massive migration to MFA and they're still getting hacked.
Indeed. Folks, Roger Grimes, thank you so much for parting with some of your wisdom with us today. Apologize for the technical difficulties we had on LinkedIn. This episode will re-air on LinkedIn in about half an hour. So you guys will be able to catch it all over again. We didn't have any issues with YouTube or Facebook, so it's a LinkedIn issue. I know that for sure now. So thank you so much to Mr. Roger Grimes. Folks, we'll be back again on Monday with another practitioner brief. Make sure to check out CISO Talk podcast this week. Also, go back, check out my Tech Corner with Perry Carpenter from a few weeks ago. We talked a lot about the psychology of cyber. Definitely an episode worth tuning into. If you're watching us or listening on your favorite podcast listening platform, just scroll down, look at the Tech Corner with Perry. Check it out. You'll definitely enjoy it. A great, great episode. Roger, any parting words?
Just congratulations for the new birth of your baby, and enjoy all that is. And
Thank you.
Have fun, and it's always great talking to you, James.
You too, Roger. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us, folks. That's it for us here today. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay cyber safe, and practice good MFA hygiene. Cheers, folks.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.